Greetings, Questers. In this week's update, I'd like to go over the brand new version 4.1.0, which is the Cartographer's update. It is a large update that improves the functionality of battle maps and lets game masters customize their battle maps to a pretty heavy degree. And so what we'll simply go over are the patch notes. Patch notes you can find up here next to the avatar menu, this little update icon. And you can pick it out of the Cartographer update at the very top, and you can go through and read through the patch notes for more detail. But in general, what this is all about maps, and the maps now have layers and objects. Objects are sit in a layer, and you can order them and change them and build all kinds of custom looking maps to your heart's content. The other thing we've added is some hotkeys for tokens on the map, being able to delete a token. With the delete key, up and down arrows will increase or decrease the elevation of the selected token. The plus or minus key will increase or decrease the size of the selected token. H will hide or show the token, and F will enable the facing functionality so you can quickly change the facing of a token. And so with that, what we're going to dive into is actually creating a brand new map. And we're going to do that. Simply come to the Maps menu. You notice that the Maps menu has changed. It is much more streamlined. It follows the same other menus like characters, so it's much easier to navigate. You can search now, which is it's not a good search thing, but maybe we'll search on basement. And you can start to filter out items if you have a lot of maps that you actually want to create. So with that, what we'll do is we are going to create a new map, and we're going to call it Grasslands. And we're going to put it in a group, and let's say we have adventure 1 part 1, right? So maybe we have a couple of maps that are for adventures, and we're going to put it in a group of adventure 1 and part 1. So when we save this and we go back, you'll notice that I now have this adventure 1 part 1 grasslands, which I can use. And what we're going to do here is we're simply going to use the edit functionality, which allows the game master to edit this map without actually showing it to the players. This is a great way to actually edit a map live when you need to edit something without actually revealing it to the players. And so we've done that, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring you to a blank space, a blank page. And you'll notice immediately that when you create a new map, it will automatically set you editing the base layer. And you can use this to view the layer here inside of the new map settings menu, which is now underneath the maps directly. It used to be a grid that was down here, and I updated the icon and moved it so it's a little easier to find. And what we're going to do is we have a base layer, but what we need to do is we need to add a actual background, something that we can use for the basic part of the map. And so we'll do that by simply dragging on a really great map pack created by a person on Patreon called Venitus Maps, and they created a really good pack that I found pretty useful to do a number of these things, but it's really high quality. I highly recommend you go check them out. So we'll simply drop the map, and you'll notice though it doesn't actually reveal anything on the map yet, but you'll notice that there's a new progress meter here, and this progress meter will show you the image that's being uploaded. It'll tell you the current progress of what's actually happening, and you'll be able to keep track of that when you have large maps uploading to the server. And so you can continue to drag more objects onto the map while you're actually uploading, and you can make it pretty easy to be able to do that. But what we're going to do is while this is uploading, we're actually going to create a couple of layers, because I want to be able to create a couple of things on the map. So let's create some water. And then we're going to create some rocks. There's some really cool rocks that we can put on top of a layer. And then I'm going to actually create a trees layer. And these 4 layers will be a great way for me to start by dragging various items onto various images onto them, and it will let me manipulate them pretty easily. And so we'll start with some trees. So let's change our layer to the tree layer once it finishes uploading here. And you'll see once it finishes, it'll give you a nice little check mark, and this will clear out in about 10 seconds. And you'll see that the object is now there, and now the image is actually loaded. And so very easily I can select the image. If I zoom out, you can see I have some handles, a drag handle for rotating, a drag handle for resizing. We don't need to change anything on that right now, but you'll notice that the positions and all of these things are set to wherever you dropped it onto the map. To start off, I'll simply change these to 0 to start this off at the 0 position. It's a little easier to set up the grid that way. And we'll just start dragging some images. So let's go to the trees layer. So you want to make sure you change the edit mode to the active, to a new layer. You'll see it changes up here, tells you what layer you're in. It will automatically filter out all of the objects here that are on the layer. If I unselect it, it will show me all the objects that exist on the map. But if I set it to active mode, it will actually, or edit mode, it will actually filter out based on the current layer. So I'm just going to take a bunch of trees. I'm going to start dragging them onto the map. We'll find a bunch of great trees. We'll just start doing. And you'll notice that the file uploader is actually pretty quick about managing these things, and it will stack up and it will show you where they are and how they're coming along. And I'll zoom in a little bit, but let's actually talk about, let's add some of the other assets to it. So let's add, we're going to switch to the water layer. You'll notice that the objects are now filtered out again, and I'm going to drag on a pond. And so we'll do that, and that's going to take a second to go. And I also want to drag on some rocks, so I'll just quickly change to the rock layer and then just drag them right onto here. And you'll see very quickly how easy it is to start to manipulate this map and build it out to a number of custom ways in which that, you know, players might find this appealing, or maybe you need something really quick and dirty. This is a great way for you to build out a map. And so let's go back to the trees layer, because I want to show the ability to rearrange the placement of a tree. So let's say I have a tree here, and I want to drag it here, but let's say I want this bigger tree to actually go over here, and I want it to actually show up under this other tree. Maybe we'll rotate it a little bit, and then I'm actually going to come down here, and you'll see that it's highlighted, and I'm going to actually drag it to the top of the list here, which is actually going to replace the order of rendering, and it's going to place it under the map, under that other tree. So now you can actually change the order of that. You can rename them to your heart's content. You know, you can just pick up an item. You know, that tree doesn't look right. It's probably not taller than that one, so maybe I'll actually drag it here and place it underneath as well. So now you can start to get a really good sense of placement and what you're trying to do. Maybe I want to make this tree really big. Maybe I want to rotate it some more, find a good position, maybe like that. That'll be great. And so you can start to manipulate your map even more and change the rotation very easily, change the scale, you know, place your objects however you want, and start to build your map. And so if you have a tile-based map, which is, you know, individual tiles or various things, you can very quickly build maps as well. And so I'm going to show a little example here of another way to accomplish this. And so what we'll do is we'll create one more map, and maybe we're going to say this is going to be called Cavern or Cave, and we're going to say this is part of Adventure 1, and we're going to say this is part 2. And so I'm going to save this. And you'll see that I now have that grouped, and maybe I want to change this, and so we'll edit this new map, and you'll see that it started editing that. And now we're going to go back to the map settings, and you can see that, again, I have a base layer, that's the only one there, and so I will start to actually drag in some tiles that I can use with the grid to start snapping them to make it so that they fit very easily and things line up, and it's really great to be able to build dynamic maps very quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some dungeon tiles, and we're going to set them up so that we can very easily start to manipulate them on a grid-based system. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to take a starting tile, and I'm going to drag it to the map. You'll see the little progress updater. and it goes here, and I'll select the object, and the first thing we want to do is make sure it's at the 0, 0 point. And what we're going to do is we're going to enable the grid and match up the number of pixels in the grid to the actual pixel width and height of the actual grid. A lot of maps do that these days, and so it's pretty easy to do. Some maps don't, and you'll have to play with it a little bit, but you can use the offset values as well as resizing the image to what you need it to. But since I know what this is, I'll simply turn it on, and you'll see immediately that the grid matches exactly. And so with the grid on now, I can actually take my next tile, and I'm going to simply drag it and drop it right here. And as soon as it goes in place, you will see that I can simply pick it up and drop it, and it will snap right to. And when I deselect it, you'll notice that it's perfectly aligned based on the tile system that's there. And I'll do that again with another piece, and I'm going to drop it up here. And I'll wait for it to load in, and then I'm going to drag it and then drop it to that point, and poof. You now have a dynamic map that is very easily set up. You can start to use tiles like these. You can build them. I like to use Dungeon Draft to build little 8x8 tiles that can give you some really great quality and build out some interesting details. But let's say you want to add some more to it, and so you create another layer, and maybe you want to say, like, I have an objects layer, and so I'm going to switch to that, and then I'm going to use some other images, and we're going to drop them right onto the map. I'll use some of the ones that we had from before that can be a pretty useful thing to reuse these assets. Can be really fun, and you'll see how big this is. It doesn't match up, but what we'll do is we'll just let it snap to the grid, and we'll move this out of the way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and the Alt key allows me to adjust this without actually snapping to the grid at this point. So now I've snapped it to the top left there, which gives it a nice clean look. I'll let it go, and my Alt key is pressed, and it lets me do that. You can hold the Alt key down to manipulate the rotation, the sizing, and you can also do it for positioning. So if I just had a standard tree that I maybe wanted to place here, you'll see it's kind of big, so maybe I want to reduce the size so it's much smaller, but I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and so it doesn't actually snap to the grid unless I really want it to. And maybe I just change the rotation a little bit, and there you go. And that's all holding the Alt key. I can also, if I had an object on the screen that I wanted to move, let's say this one here, but I went to the edge of the screen, if I wanted to move further past the screen, a lot of times you're not going to be able to because of the borders of what you're looking at. If you hold down the Shift key, it will toggle to a drag, which I can let go immediately and continue to move. So I can do that very quickly to be able to drag around my items on the map without having actually to leave the map, leave the area. Oh, forgot to press the Alt key. And there you go. So you have some really quick and easy ways to manipulate building up a map. The other thing that maybe I want to do is add a couple of characters that are NPCs that are here, but they may not actually need a token for, because I don't want to deal with them in that manner. So let's add a couple. So maybe we have a person who's stuck back here because there's some gnolls or goblins or something like that, and they're preventing him from escaping. So you can simply drag, an image that has what you're looking for, and I'll hold down the Control key, and what this will do is this will actually let me continue to keep the aspect ratio of the image. So maybe I'm going to reduce him down to just about the size of a square. Since I'm not holding the Alt key, when I let him go, it will snap to the square, which is a great way to set it up to be about the same size as you expect, but keeping the aspect ratio. And then maybe I'll move him to this space here, and then I'm going to rotate him. And you'll notice if I rotate without any sort of holding the Alt key or anything, it will snap. And you can simply snap your rotations to make it very easy. But in this case, maybe I'll just make him face this way. And so again, you can see very quickly I can add some features to the map that weren't there before that really kind of bring out the map itself. And maybe I'll add one more person, and we'll just drop this in. And you can find these tokens from Forgotten Adventures on Patreon. This was also another free pack. They make some fantastic packs out there. I highly recommend you go looking for some. I'll hold the aspect ratio down, you'll see. So if I did this, you'll see that it lets you do whatever. But if I hold control, the aspect ratio is maintained. I let go, it's going to size to a grid square. Set this person here, snaps to the grid, and there you go. And then maybe I actually want to create another layer that is specifically for people. And this is the way that you can do that, is if I created this in there on the objects layer, I can simply change them to the people layer, pick the man, put them on the people layer, and then it makes it very easy to be able to manipulate that and do some organization of some of your objects. I'll turn off the edit mode, and then you can see all of the items here. You can select them. You cannot move them when you're not in edit mode, but you can select them and see them and be able to rename them and reorder them if you really need to. But that's a way to manage that. And so with that, you can see all the features that have been added to create this new map system that makes it much more robust, gives game masters a huge power at their hands to be able to build and create maps almost at will. And you can use another tool to build some basic tiles if you want, or download some. There's many great resources out there for you to do that. And finally, what we'll show is some of the new hotkey features. And I'll simply take one of the characters and I'll drag them onto the map. Maybe there's some giant rats in here, and we don't want to be bothered by them. So we'll have to avoid getting attacked. And you can see that I have a bunch of rats now, and I have my character. And let's say maybe I'm sneaking, and so now I can hold down the H key, and it's going to hide my token. And you can see that works great. I can hit H to unhide them. I can also hit the F key to change my facing, which uses also a snap to grid if it's enabled. It lets me quickly change my facing. And then I can also use the plus or minus key to change the size of my token if I wish, if I'm really a giant person or not, and reduce the size. I can also use the up and down arrows to adjust the elevation of my token. So if I decide I want to go up or down, it's very easy to manipulate those. And then finally, let's say I added one too many rats. I can simply hit the delete key, and it's going to bring up a pop-up asking you if you want to delete it. Simply hit yes, and your rat is gone. And that's it for this update. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know it's a little long, and there's a lot of features to be talking about, but I appreciate you stopping by, and keep questing.